Welcome to the Barcelona Podcast, episode 152. Initial opinions brought to you by the most influential voices in the FC Barcelona community. I'm Dan Hilton, joined by my friend Francesc Tomas, and today we have the challenge of talking the ever-changing transfer rumors. Francesc, I'm going to ask how you're doing, but I don't want to run out of time in the show because by the time you open your mouth, there's going to be 900 tweets about the futures of Coutinho and Neymar. Things are ever-changing, Francesc. It's a hectic pace.
It really is, but, it's like this every summer. I think the names change, but the drama and the transfer sort of newspaper selling dilemmas that pop up every summer are the same. So we're just trying to break everything down. And, by the time you listen to the show, things may have changed. But, hey, we're here to give our opinions.
Yeah, it's funny for those who've been listening for the last few weeks. You can see even on social media that Francesc and I do have a different voice because Francesc is much, much more tolerant of all the drama and all the things going on in the rumor mill than I am. I am much more keep my head in the sand like an ostrich and just worry about those preseason matches. So we're going to try, and I'm going to try my best, again, leaning on Francesc on this one because today's La Gran Pregunta. Again, this one is changing by the minute, by the hour, so I'm going to hopefully have this one out in a few hours. So if you're listening to it, at the moment, Coutinho probably still hasn't been moved, but La Gran Pregunta today, will Coutinho be loaned or sold? Which we actually haven't talked about yet. We just talked about him getting out of the club. But today, I really want to harp on whether or not what a loan could mean for him and what being sold could mean for him and the likelihood of both of those things happening because obviously the English Premier League transfer window is already closed. So a huge avenue for most of the clubs in the world with money is now gone. So if Coutinho is to leave, whether on loan, where a team would most likely have to pay his salary or wages, or Barcelona would still have to pay the majority of his wages and loans, or he's sold for what Barcelona wants between, I guess, 80 and 120 million, but there's only one or two clubs in the world at the moment that can still afford that, I'd say, left in the transfer window after the EPL window closed. So it's a tough thing to ask, Francesc, and let's just get your knee-jerk reaction on this one.
Well, for me, Coutinho has unfortunately not succeeded at Barca. I think that's pretty clear. Not just the fact that he hasn't really fully adapted to the system, but the fact that he hasn't handled the pressure and the situation and the fact that he was playing alongside very, very important stars. Of course, he was doing that at Liverpool as well, but I think when you're playing alongside Messi, Suarez, and under the eyes of the Camp Nou week in, week out, also what it means in terms of Marca, Sport, Mundo Deportivo, and all the press in Spain, all the different TV channels, he just hasn't cut it. You can argue that he was never played in his ideal position because when he was signed, it was always going to be as a replacement for Iniesta, as an interior midfielder, normally on the left, but that really hasn't happened very often, or not as often as I'm sure he would have liked. But, he needs to play what the manager tells him to play, and when you are the most expensive signing in the club, which let's not forget that is still the case, you need to perform from day one, and the pressure, had he been promoted from La Masia, would have been different. I think the fan base would have been a bit more forgiving, but when you're coming as a superstar, you need to be performing, and he just has not done that. He's scored several goals, some of them has been spectacular, but the return for the investment, it just hasn't been there. So for me, the most important thing is to get Coutinho what he deserves, and at this moment in time, what he deserves is to be somewhere else. We don't necessarily need to free up a spot to bring Neymar, but in terms of wage, I think it is essential that Coutinho's wage goes. As you mentioned, Dan, you're totally right. I think PSG, Bayern Munich, and maybe Juventus or someone in the Serie A are the only likely destinations that Coutinho has now left. I think Man United or Tottenham would have been great for him, even going back to Liverpool. But, we can't really turn the past and change what happened. So let's just forget about that. Let's look forward and let's just trust this board, which, regular listeners know I'm not the biggest fan, but that's all we can trust. So let's trust the current board can sort this one out and get Coutinho out, so we can first free up a spot for Neymar if he wants it, and if he doesn't do that, then free up more time for Dembélé, Griezmann, etc.
I want to talk, give a little bit of pushback on the Coutinho stuff. And we talk about, Liverpool and potentially going back to Liverpool for Coutinho. And part of my a counter argument I heard to that was the fact that Liverpool have now made the last two Champions League finals, and so why would, if you're the Champions League trophy winner or defending champion, why would you want a guy who 2 seasons ago, after leaving your club in 22 matches, scored 10 goals, 6 assists, so not too bad in the first spring in a new club, a difficult club to adapt to as Barcelona is, as we know, and then last season, in 54 matches, 11 goals and 5 assists. Obviously, that's not going to cut it, and we talk about how he doesn't integrate on the field, and it just looks like the ball stops with him, and he takes too many long shots, and things just look disorganized, and he doesn't fit. That's all the eye test, but even just simple production, it's just not working. It's, again, both the X's and O's and the eye test that Coutinho just doesn't make sense at Barcelona. So, yes, you have to get him out. Unfortunately, that means that Barcelona have lost all leverage. And I want to talk about, again, these are ever-changing, but I want to talk about the Bayern news at the moment. I think James Rodriguez, as we've seen at Bayern recently, would be the model where Bayern would pay his salary and then have him on loan with an option to buy. The downside here is not only can Bayern just send him back and Barcelona have to worry about this all over again, but Barcelona may have an even harder time selling him, just like Real Madrid are having now with James and technically Bale too. And as you mentioned, it's a good point where Juventus, I think Paulo Dybala could be one of these dominoes. But then when we talk about Bale, James Rodriguez, Dybala, Coutinho, it's guys that aren't really fitting at those major clubs. And unless it's, and I guess you say Neymar too, but it would basically just be a merry-go-round where all those players basically move one seat to the, or that's more musical chairs, where they all move one seat to the right, and then that's how everybody lands, right? Because there's no way that those players on those wages can be afforded again by any other clubs other than the big ones that we're currently talking about. And I think the final point to this is, because Barcelona may be losing leverage, I think I want to be very clear that it's not Bayern who probably picked up the phone to Barcelona. It's Barcelona who have to pick up the phone for trying to offload Coutinho. Because even though Bayern may not want him, they will look at that situation because, you know, you then have to do the research into the other club that we're talking about in potential negotiations. That Bayern wanted Leroy Sané. I know they're paying coy about that, but if he doesn't get hurt against Liverpool, then Leroy Sané is basically the guy to go on the wing, and they clearly wanted a top talent on the wing. And it appears that they could still be looking to strengthen that after losing Frank Ribery and Arjen Robben finally after all these years, and then having often injured Kingsley Coman and Serge Gnabry as the main options. Now Thomas Muller, who, as we know, doesn't really play on the wing. He plays much more in a fluid role. The German word they always use escapes me at the moment. But you know, he was there in the German Super Cup against Dortmund, where Bayern Munich did not look their sharpest, and Dortmund wound up winning that in the German Super Cup. And then they could also be relying heavily on teenage Canadian Alphonso Davies, who just in his, I guess, technically second season at the club, but basically 1+. So they are still looking at the wing. And so I think there is something to be said here about Coutinho on loan filling a need. But as I said, then in the future, it creates more problems for Barcelona when they have to try to look to resell him later on. And then Bayern could just do the same thing they do with James, where they just give him right back, and then we've got the same problem. If he also fails to assimilate at Bayern Munich, that really takes his whole transfer value down a good margin. But then maybe Barcelona can take a loss on him, and then you're talking about the standard of club like an Inter Milan or an Everton or a AC Milan, and now you're talking in the range of 50 or 60 million. But my question then, Francesc, for you would be, would Barcelona rather swallow their pride and take a lower amount, knowing that they've lost leverage in negotiations?
I think they're going to lose money regardless, because no one in their right mind would pay what we paid for Coutinho
of course, a
couple of seasons ago.
But even 80 or 90 million, I mean, how much of a loss, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, obviously not 120, but how much?
Well, I think there's two ways to look about this. See, if you keep him in the squad, and we can just go back to the preseason games, where in the pecking order is he? He's probably 5th or 6th as a forward. Yep. He's not going to be a striker, but as a winger, he's probably 3rd or 4th. If Neymar does come, which I know this is controversial, but I've got high hopes that he will come back. So then he's going to go another step down. In terms of midfield, you've got Puig, Alanya, but then you've got obviously the more established players such as Rakitic. You've got Rafinha as well, who could be staying in the end if his deal to Valencia is not finalized. You've got Vidal, you've got Rakitic, you've got all sorts of players, Arthur, all sorts of players that really need their minutes to grow. And regardless of who you've got in the squad, the most important person in it is the manager. And the manager has clearly decided that Coutinho is not his first choice up front or in his top 5 choices. He wouldn't be in midfield as well. So then you just have to take a loss, and you have to take a loss because this is someone who is supremely expensive, not just because of the money of the transfer, because that money in a way is gone already, is his wage, and you need to alleviate that in order to free up space to make the Neymar thing happen. And if it just doesn't happen, then fair enough, we just continue moving forward. But Coutinho, given his attitude, given his lack of attitude, given the very weak eagerness to improve that he has chosen and to adapt to his surroundings, I think needs to go. And the board just need to explore all options and go for the best possible deal. If it means selling him by 50, 60 million, then so be it, because he's not going to get better. Definitely at Barca he won't. If he goes into another team, which is the main protagonist, that the game flows through him, and he's in a way away from the Barca intense spotlight, then he may sort of flourish again, and maybe the player that we signed or was impressing at Liverpool. But at Barca, alongside Messi, alongside Suarez, alongside all our superstars, it's just not happening for him. I think he knows that as well, and the only way forward is to cut our losses and offload them.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see how, even in preseason, the one substitute appearance he made against Napoli, where clearly they were bringing him back solely after Copa America, he did excel with Brazil as an attacking midfielder in front of Artur. And then in the preseason game, we saw that he played more centrally. He did play at an attacking midfield spot where he had played at Liverpool as well, not all the way out on the left wing or not even as an interior, but he played as an attacking number 10 midfielder, which, I guess that's what you would call Messi, but Barcelona don't really have that position, and they don't really utilize that position, like the Riquelme position, if you will. That's really the closest thing we've seen at Barcelona to a number 10 role. So Coutinho, just again, his best position is not a position that Barcelona has to offer him in almost any situation because of the attacking options and the midfield options they have. They're traditional players in those positions. And again, the other guy that would play in that role is Lionel Messi, and so he's there, and the incumbent there, and now Griezmann can, in theory, kind of play that as well. So I think that even on that depth chart of a fictional position we're making up, Coutinho is still third on that depth chart, which is again, that tells you all you need to know. Now, Francesc, I think you hit on enough points for us to move into La Ronda, where we have questions from a number of different sources today. We've even got one from one of our Patreons, which we'll get to in a second. But okay, Francesc, I think it's been a while since you gave one of your drum rolls. Can I have a drum roll, please? All right, Francesc, it's finally time. I know that phrase about rumbling is copyrighted for boxing, so I can't say that because it's copyrighted, but you get the idea. Francesc, you are pro Neymar returning to Barcelona. As people have been hearing for weeks and weeks, I am very opposed to the move. And I think it's time you and I finally talk about it. Francesc, are you ready? Unfortunately, we don't have a therapist or a third party like a marriage counselor here with us, but I think we're going to be okay, right?
Well, unfortunately, we've got each other, so let's do that.
All right, here we go. The question that we're getting is from Jawid, and that is, what about Neymar? Would he finally come to Barcelona or not? Now, practically speaking, my thinking against it is that, well, there's also news, and obviously it sells paper to say Neymar could go to Barcelona or Real Madrid, or it's a tug of war between the two giants. But at the moment, Neymar can't afford him. I mean, that's just FFP, even though FFP is kind of a joke because you just throw money at them and they forget about it. But I think it would have to be with a swap of Bale and James or Isco, which I think would all be good players for PSG. I don't think PSG loses too much on that. And Barcelona would need to give up players that they actually want and are encumbered into the squad, as opposed to guys who are want away at Real Madrid. And the other thing, like we talked about the lack of leverage that Barcelona has with Coutinho, PSG have almost no leverage anymore with Neymar, but that's a player they're still asking for 200 million for. It's just, the numbers here are what's boggling. Obviously, to sell papers, you don't have to use a calculator, but I don't understand how numerically everything works unless, again, this is my big argument, unless Barcelona says, sure, and that's under the assumption that, again, Barcelona have any leverage in getting rid of Coutinho, and that would, again, it's just who's lost more leverage, Barcelona, Coutinho, or PSG with Neymar. I think it's Neymar, but they could also still refuse Coutinho. That said, I think it's a pipe dream to think that that PSG are going to say, oh yeah, sure, we'll take Rakitic off your hands. No, they're going to come for Dembélé. They're going to come for maybe Umtiti or Semedo, or again, they're going to be coming for other players that Barcelona also value and are part of their club. Now, for me, it's almost a math equation that I would rather have 8 years of Dembélé and 3 years of Messi working along one side, 1 year of Luis Suarez and 6 years of Antoine Griezmann. With that being, because again, I think even with Suarez being slowly faded out over the next year or two, then you still have an attacking trio of Griezmann at that number 9 and Messi and Dembélé. And you have that for at least 2 or 3 more years. Again, it's all dependent on Messi, but it seems like, again, he seems to be capable of playing 2 or 3 more years. And then again, I would hope, and this is me just being, it's funny, Francesc, I get accused of being a Cruyffist. I get accused of being just a pragmatist who doesn't care about any of those ideas. I get accused, and that's what being a podcast is, right? We get accused of being pro Valverde, but then anti the club because when we trash Valverde and all these different things. So I think my stance on that is that I would trust, though, in the production of Álvaro Ruiz and the likes of Ansu Fati, who, while he is only 16, I'm not anointing him the future of the club. I'm saying that just having a 16-year-old, even if it's not Ansu Fati, whoever, having a 16-year-old at the club, if Messi survives, again, 3-4 more years, and Griezmann is 5-6 years, then Ansu Fati is 21 years old. And then Dembélé and Griezmann are the big 2 attack force, and then you're slowly integrating more. Again, at that time, Álvaro Ruiz is now we're talking 23 years old, 24 years old. And again, Barcelona will also most likely have funds to go out and get another big name. I just think Neymar made sense when he came to the club the first time from Santos, but it's not just Dembélé for Neymar. It's that Neymar coming, even if it's not Dembélé getting sent to PSG, it's the end of Dembélé at Barcelona. I don't see any other way that doesn't happen just because of what that means on the wing. So that also goes to Gurdeep's question, and you can help me with this. Where would Neymar fit? The answer is he's going to fit on the left wing. It's where does everyone else fit around him? And at this point, if Barcelona get him, I think they're just saying, who cares where the rest of you fit? We got the guy we wanted. We got the Brazilian marketing ploy. We're going to get a lot of money on shirt sales. We're really happy about that. And I think have I become a cynic over the summer with all these transfer rumors, Francesc? Maybe that's really the question I have for you.
Well, probably you just got tired of all the rumors going back and forth. For me, I think everything that you have said can happen. But obviously the share of minutes for Neymar, if he is signed, will have to come off some of the players you mentioned. Especially, I would say Dembélé's game will be affected. But for me, the question is clearer than all that. Is who would Messi rather have in the Champions League semi-finals alongside? Last year, Dembélé, if he had scored the 4th goal at the Camp Nou, Liverpool don't win the Champions League. We're in the final, and then we have to play Tottenham, and I think we would have beaten them. 2 years ago, had Neymar been in the team, then things could have been different. I think it all comes down to that. The clock is ticking. As you have mentioned throughout the show, Messi doesn't have many years left. I think we're being optimistic saying there's 3 and 4. I think it's more than 2 or even 3. And I would rather have Messi with the players he wants around. I think he does trust, obviously, Suarez. He's constantly looking for him. He does trust Jordi Alba. And he has absolute trust on Neymar as well. And it's fairly clear that Messi will be a much more comfortable captain for us had Neymar been alongside him. We have got, over the last 2 years, we have become much more dependent on Messi. And a lot of goals have just come from him. Suarez, everyone seems to try and bury him because, people get tired of strikers. I think it's happened with Benzema and Madrid. But obviously, Luis Suarez is 97 million times the player that Benzema is. But Suarez is going to get his fair share of goals. It's clear that Messi will get his as well. Then Griezmann may add some. Dembélé may add some, but not that many. I think if you add Neymar to the mix, you've got guaranteed 20 to 25 goals in there, and that can only help. But I think it all comes down to La Liga. All right, so in La Liga, we've got a squad that is, in my eyes, much more powerful than it has been for the last 5-6 years. Obviously, when Luis Enrique won the Champions League, you had the MSN up front, everyone at their peak. And I'm not going to say easy peasy, but they did sort out a lot of games. Obviously, they're a little bit older now, but the thing is, the squad around has been re-strengthened. Every single position has 2 or even 3 players that could be perfect starters. So I don't think our fight is going to be winning La Liga. And you may roll this clip back in 7 or 8 months' time and say, Francesc, you were so wrong. But I think that with the squad we have, we should be winning La Liga. Not without sacrifice, not without worries, not without ups and downs, but I think that that's a given. And then it's all about which is starting 11, who are your 11 heroes that are going to win that crucial game away at Man United, Chelsea, Juventus. Who are those going to be? And Messi will play. Then who will Messi want? He will want Suarez and he will want Neymar. If you can have Griezmann coming off the bench at some stage to grab a couple of goals, great. Dembélé to add the speed, fantastic. But I think it all comes down to saying the first starting 11, and I do get the depth bit, but for the crucial matches in the final third of the season, what you want is starting 11 players that can unbalance games, and Neymar is one of them. And out of the 5-6 players you mentioned earlier with James, Bale, etc., I think Neymar is, head and shoulders above those that you mentioned in terms of production. Obviously, PSG was not a great move for him socially, in terms of he was a clown when he left Barca the way he did it. But if you think about his history, he's done it throughout. He did it to Santos and he's doing it to PSG as well. Of course, that goes back to the values, and I've said in the podcast many times, Mescu Club, etc. But the thing is, if he had been down to me, I wouldn't have signed Griezmann. But now the club has already signed Griezmann and Mescu Club is already sort of being put to the side. Then you may as well get the best player in the market to our club, and that's Neymar. So that's it in a nutshell for me.
Yeah, I mean, I see all the arguments as well because of the quality of play that Neymar is capable of being. I use that with the backdrop of we also talk about the player that Dembélé could be as well with many more years, because since Neymar left Barcelona, for as much as his numerical production is, he's been awfully injured as well, and he hasn't actually been in a big game since he left Barcelona because of his injuries and the way that that PSG rather have crashed out of the Champions Leagues. That Neymar hasn't actually been in the big moment you're discussing since he left, and so I think where the pull that you get me on comes is that it's the guy that Messi wants, and but then I actually have to almost give pushback on that, in that how much are we willing to continue to, like, what if it is Messi who says, to the board and which I don't believe he does. Like, I don't actually believe that Messi actually has a LeBron James-esque, again, this isn't verified either, but, I am going to attack your Lakers, Francesc, and saying that, LeBron has always had more pull than we say he does, when it comes to, he knows agents, and it's not a surprise when, guys that share his agent or move to the agency that he also shares wind up coming to the teams that he plays on. But that said, I don't think Messi, even though he might have that same pull, I don't think he uses that pull. And, that's my worry, is that it's putting makeup on a pig, that we paint over what all of that Neymar means. And I also understand the argument that you're saying that Mesquino Club is already something that we put to bed, which I don't think I can be that cynical. And I think that even if Griezmann was again against the mythos or the ethos or the pathos, I'm not sure which one it is, but then we have to go. It is possible to go backwards and do that, and I think Messi's friendship with and Suarez and their friendship with Neymar, I think, covers up, again, with the makeup on a pig, covers up all the circus that maybe not he individually would bring, because yes, he might just assimilate right back into the locker room, and the friendships are holding still. But if Messi wants all of his now often injured friends who are over the age of 27, 28, or they're in their 30s, that's going to, I think, put the club on a crash course, in the post Messi years. But that said,
but Dan, with that, if Neymar gets injured, you put Dembélé in or Griezmann.
But I don't think Dembélé. I don't think Dembélé can stay. I think Dembélé's gone, because when it comes to wages, when it comes to minutes and playing time, if I'm Dembélé and I'm 22 years old, there's no way I'm the fifth option. There's no way Ousmane Dembélé is going to sit on the bench as a fifth option. And again, with wages, I think Barcelona there's going to become a reckoning. And that might be January, that might be next summer. So yes, maybe this season with Neymar winds up being the perfect campaign where you win the Champions League, you win everything because your squad is the deepest and best squad that's ever been assembled in terms of talent and an attacking force. But that said, there's going to come a point when there's just too many players. And that's what's happening in the midfield right now. There's just too many players.
Yeah, which is why Coutinho should be the first one to go. If you free up the Coutinho wage, I think the Neymar wage does have a room and space in there. And in midfield, Rakitic, we've been saying forever he could leave, but I think he's one of Valverde's favorites. So I don't really see who goes in there beyond Vidal, and I don't think anyone really is going to pay big bucks for him. But going back to the Neymar thing, I think it is essential that we give Messi the best possible chance to, if he's got 3 years left, say, win 3 more Champions League. And I think with that, and with Valverde as well, if you give Valverde Neymar, I think he's an automatic starter if he's fit. He's not the same with Dembélé. I would say we keep Dembélé, we offload Coutinho, but if you give the manager Neymar and you ask him who the best 11 are, Neymar is in it. So that's my reasoning for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Neymar. I agree on that point that Neymar slots right in. Then I said I think that means that I think the future of Dembélé, because I mean at 22 he's going to need to play, and he's not going to be playing with Neymar and Messi and Suarez and Griezmann for at least 2 years. So I mean, I think that puts a wrap on Dembélé. So I think that's what it is. I think you and I are just arguing basically the future of Dembélé plus a bunch of other players against what the next few seasons with Neymar would mean. And I think we're basically, I think, shadowing the argument of just putting the players that would perfectly fit with Messi to win as much as we possibly can, and then worry about the next era in the future when, to go back to the board here, when the board's time is up as well, and Messi's time is up, and all that works together, that Barca era is the next person's problem. It's like a politician where, a lot of times politicians aren't motivated by long-term future because they might not be in office then. If things go wrong and they get voted out of office, well, I mean, they don't want to deal with the ramifications of that. So they're going to make every decision to appease, the present and make sure they stay in office, even if that hurts the future. So, wow, I don't know what somebody put in my cereal this morning, Francesc. I don't eat cereal, but I think we should move on to...
We agree to disagree.
Yeah.
We agree to disagree.
And we're going to see who's right in a few weeks. If Neymar is on the club or if he's not, then we'll see who the majority of the board and who some other people at the club might agree with. Now,
we'll see.
One thing we might agree on, though, is I think the overt criticism of Valverde. Ali asks, why is Valverde still in charge as a manager? And as I said, in the last few weeks, I'm getting a lot of criticism about even defending Valverde. But, Francesc, the problem with defending Valverde is that he's the manager of Barcelona. And I don't know how to get around that, because when you talk about the manager of Barcelona, you have to say Valverde's name. I can't substitute. Maybe what I need to do, Francesc, is call him Dr. Frankenstein or just use a surname so that people don't know I'm talking about Valverde. And then we just use we use a special nickname we come up with. But he's the manager of Barcelona. That's why he's in charge. It's his third season. And as I said, it's not just the Mourinho effect. A lot of guys wind up being there for 3 seasons. So I think win or lose, this might be Valverde's last in charge of Barcelona, and then it'll be time for a new era. And as we know, Xavi was not ready to go right from being a player to being a coach, but while he is getting, I don't know if he was officially ejected. You could tell me more about that, being Qatar yourself. But Xavi is now on the coaching trail, and we'll see how long it takes him to get there, and whether or not there's a guy in between him and Valverde. But we kind of know where this story eventually winds up. It ends up with Xavi Hernandez in charge of Barcelona. It's just whether or not Valverde is the only placekeeper, if you will. And again, Xavi's coaching career doesn't perfectly line up with Messi's career, as far as years. So we'll see how that pans out. But the reason why Valverde is still the manager is because they still have him in charge, and it seems like the players like him, and it seems like, to me, which will also affect other questions here, he's willing to press a little more with the quality and the group he has. And if he's willing to adapt and to evolve, the one thing I'm almost yelling into the microphone, but maybe I'll whisper it just so I don't get too excited, is that if he's willing to press with a younger squad, then that means he's willing to adapt and change. And the only thing we have to, I mean, you and I have been very critical of Valverde in the past because he has done the same things. He's run tired legs into the ground. He hasn't rotated properly, and he's made mistakes that we think cost Barcelona dire Champions League ramifications. That may have been enough to be fired. We said that back in the spring, that he probably didn't deserve to keep his job, but he did. And if he's willing to adapt and change and use the squad he has to press a little more and attack teams and be more, not even attack-minded, but just be a little more forward-thinking and more, how do I say, make Barcelona look a little more like Barcelona. Brave, yes. Make Barcelona look more like the Barcelona we think they should look. And if he's willing to do that and adapt, we as Kool-Aids have to give him the benefit of the doubt that he has learned from his mistakes, he has added to the squad in ways that he wanted, and that Barcelona will look more like Barcelona even if he's in charge.
Yeah, agreed. I think Valverde is still the manager at Barca because he's a good coach. He's a good coach who succeeds domestically. And I think the board, what they're thinking is, and I know the players think this as well, that he would have learned from his mistakes. I mean, the first season when we lost to Roma, that was just because of really, I'm not going to say stupid, but really weak rotation. Pretty much everyone saw it coming and he just did not. And I think he learned from that mistake in the second season. The defeat in Liverpool, I still think it's inexplicable. You've got different ways to reason, of course, tired legs, etc. But at that point of the season, every team is the same. So I think it was just mentality and being able to convince the players that they had to go out and bite in and they had to be hungry, but they just were not. Because the difference between winning and losing at that stage last year was so little, I think the board have thought, okay, let's look at options, see who's out there. Let's see what the players think. And overall, the decision was to keep the manager. And all we can do now is, I'm not going to say support it blindly because, everyone's got their own mind and we can just not do that. But we need to understand that right now, all we can do is see what happens. Understand that the squad is the best squad we've had, I would say, in the last 4 or 5 years. And keep pushing forward together. We don't have any other options.
Yeah, I agree. And so the next question we have is a little more difficult from Patreon Mike Crimmins, who you actually heard on the Patreon special 2 weeks ago. So, Mike, hello again. Thanks for coming on the show 2 weeks ago. And let's go with his question here. What player/position/area are you most concerned about for the season? Francesc, I'll let you go first.
Difficult question. I would say right now the most concerned I am for is the wings. We've been discussing Coutinho, Neymar, Dembélé. And I think I'm concerned there because we just don't know who's going to be the one that is going to have the most minutes. Beyond that, I think the centre-backs are solid. I think Lenglet was great last season and Umtiti seems determined this preseason to step it up. Not bothered or concerned, rather, about the fullbacks. I think they're both solid in terms of Semedo and Alba and their backups. We've got a million midfielders. I think we'll be able to find 3 that do the job well, especially with the young there being the star of the show so far this year. So I think it's understanding who the winger will be, whether we get Neymar or not, and what the purpose will be. Because as much as we want Dembélé to grow and develop, etc., his crossing, his finishing, and his composure is just terrible at times. So he needs to grow up in there. So yeah, I think the wings for me.
Yeah, well, I think as I've been saying for the last few weeks and seeing the total squad that we have, again, every time I talk about the squad, I'm not even talking about Coutinho. And at some point, I'm probably always forgetting the likes of Vidal or one of the midfielders or Sergi Roberto in the midfield. But for me, Mike had said that he is concerned about central defense, and I think a long-term injury to PK, even though I think Barcelona, Lenglet, and Umtiti are good enough where you wouldn't have to worry about 2 left-footed center backs, Barcelona just doesn't usually play like that. They play a left-footed center back in Lenglet and Umtiti, and they pair them with a PK or Todibo who are right-footed. But I am also willing to push Todibo of what we've seen in preseason. It's so funny because we haven't seen too much of him. How many Toulouse games did I see with him in? Well, he played 10. And I didn't obviously see any of those, even by accident. So I had never really seen him other than highlight things that were made on the internet, and you can't trust those either because it's only the touches. It's not how he reads a game, and you can't really get the nuance of the performance that particularly a center back might have. But yeah, I think a long-term injury to PK would be the only worry in center defense. That said, I think it's not a player or position that I'm necessarily worried about. I'm still in year 3 of Valverde going to be worried about the physical reliability, and this is not against him. Again, we have a squad that under Luis Enrique, it's still basically the same guys. It's Busquets, it's Rakitic, it's Messi, it's Suarez, and they were amazing. I mean, they were the best squad, they were the best players in the world 4 or 5 years ago, and it's not that Messi still isn't the best player in the world, because he is. Rakitic, Busquets are still some of the best midfielders in the world, and Suarez is still one of the top number 9s when he's in form or when he's trying. But that last point is the big one, that if Valverde is going to shift a little more to a pressing system, which I think all Kool-Aids kind of in different ways and words believe that he should, I'm worried about the likes of Luis Suarez, who in that first leg against Napoli, I was very critical of. I thought when you are leading the press, your number 9 may be the most important defender you have. and he just wasn't trying because he was preseason. He said, okay, I'm going to hang out, eat a donut, look to try to pop one in while the rest of the team presses behind me, and that's frustrating. But then in the second leg, we saw what Suarez is when we all compliment him, and he was trying, and he was leading the line, he was pressing hard. I'm not worried about Griezmann. He's, again, under Diego Simeone, he did it, so he's willing to press hard. But when the likes of Suarez, and again, Messi works so hard offensively, what happens when Messi needs to press for 90 minutes for 55 games in a season, and then Busquets and Rakitic, who they do their work, they do their defensive due diligence, but they're also a step slower than they were 5 years ago. And then Vidal as well is a step slower. He's now, again, he gets closer to his mid-30s every single year. And Alba, if he is run out for a long time, and let's say Valverde doesn't trust Junior Firpo, who, again, there's no guarantee that he will trust his backup, then Alba winds up playing a ton of games. And obviously in a pressing system, the ability of Alba and Semedo to get back and help defend and cut off those counterattacks is very vital. So running Alba out for too many games as well is a worry. So when you talk about Suarez, Messi, Busquets, Rakitic, Vidal, Alba, and that core, I'm still going to be worried about the physical reliability to play those guys for 45 matches or 50 or 55 matches this season. And again, that goes back to putting in Valverde. But again, it might not be his fault if injuries happen. And then Alba Semedo goes down. That might expose the more inexperienced fullbacks in Firpo and Musawage, who has not really looked that great in preseason. He looks fine. He looks fine enough to be a right backup, shifting Roberto into the midfield, which is our next listener question. But again, before that, I just wanted to, Francesc, do you have anything to add about the pressing system and worrying about the veterans?
No. You've covered that.
Okay, so Matt Lane asks, do you think Sergi Roberto will regret moving to the midfield?
No, I think Roberto has been trying for years to move into midfield. We can't forget that growing up through La Masia, he was mainly playing in the Busquets role, sometimes as an interior midfielder as well, and never been a right back. It will happen out of necessity, especially after Dani Alves' departure, that he had to be there. And no, I think Roberto is a very good midfielder. I think, in a way, linked to the answer you just gave, Sergi Roberto is going to be a crucial part of the squad this year. I think Alanya has a fantastic, very important role to play as well. And if you want Rakitic, Busquets, if you are Valverde, right, and you want Rakitic, Busquets to be as fresh as they possibly can because they are in your first 11, let's just say that. They wouldn't be in mine, by the way, but they are in Valverde's clearly. Then you need to play Roberto a lot. You need to play Arthur a lot. You need to play Alanya a lot and give them a lot of minutes so that the preferred 11 are rested. I think the key is going to have, and I say this every season, having 15, 16, 17 starters who feel valuable and can actually challenge each other for a starting spot when it actually matters. So I think they've got a fantastic, very important role to play. And Sergi Roberto has always wanted to be a midfielder. Let's not forget he's played for Spain as an international there as well. And throughout his whole career, through the under-16s, 14s, 17s, 19s, etc. So I really do hope that it does work out for him because success for Sergi Roberto is success for all of us.
Yeah, I think back when he was a midfielder, again, it's been 4 seasons, really, since he made that switch. And that's a long time to go back to a highest level of Barcelona back into the midfield. But that said, his first issues back then, I think, not only was he behind Thiago Alcantara in the depth chart, and those younger midfielder minutes would go to Thiago, but I think Roberto's biggest issue, to me at least, was a little bit of confidence. We knew he could make those forward and foraying runs, and obviously remember the what happened with PSG, and he's become this folklore hero because of some of those late goals. But he does his normal, we'll say 9 to 5 job when he's not being a hero, is that he is a safe and assured midfielder who does move the ball well, who does just, again, he keeps the pace of a game, and he is La Masia trained, and you can see that on the field. While it was a benefit, I think, for Alenya, Roberto, and De Jong to be the starting 3 midfielders, just because of the rotation that Valverde was using in the preseason with the midfield, as well as Artur and Vidal coming back so late from Copa America, Alenya, De Jong, and Roberto got the benefit of starting together in the final preseason game when Barcelona should be the closest that they are going to be to the regular season. But they were also by far the best midfield combination that we saw. And this goes back to the bravery point. And the final question I'm going to ask you, Francesc, I'll give you a minute to start thinking about as I finish answering this one, is what is the starting 11 versus Athletic? And so that's a question I'm about to ask you. But going back to the point of those three in the midfield against Napoli in the preseason, that they were so successful together. Will Valverde have the bravery over the course of this season, if he has the best three option that he had that worked well together and it all seemed to be clicking, does he have the bravery to go with that when he's back against the wall? It's such a big question about Valverde this season and the squad, that if Alenya working alongside De Jong is what brings the best out of De Jong and makes Carlos Alenya potentially more valuable on the field than the likes of Artur or Rakitic. And I'm not just saying Rakitic or Vidal. I'm not just saying the old heads. I'm saying Artur even. If Alenya becomes more valuable playing next to De Jong and Roberto in the midfield, does Valverde have the bravery to do that when push comes to shove? That's an answer. I think it's no, but that is, again, a big thing that, if we were in Valverde's shoes, Francis, I think you and I would have trouble with that as well. But, the easiest question now he has to have, as he always says, he's going to take it, like every manager, they're going to take it 1 week at a time, and through the course of a season, rotation, injuries, form, all those things affect decision-making. So all I have to ask you, Frances, is not whether or not you would play Carlos Alenya in a big moment if you had to. That's a difficult question. The easy one, for you, I guess it's easy, is what's the starting 11 versus Athletic?
For me or for Valverde?
Great question. I guess we'll say you, but then you can tell me what your gut says that Valverde is going to do.
Okay, I'll give you both. For me, should be Ter Stegen, then Semedo and Alba in the wings. In the middle, Piqué and Umtiti. Then for me, is De Jong, Alanya, and Sergi Roberto. And up front, Messi, Suarez, and Griezmann. Valverde's 11 is different. I would say he's going to play Ter Stegen, the Alba, Semedo. I would say probably Lenglet and Piqué just to go for the pairing from last year. I think he plays Busquets and Rakitic. He plays De Jong on the other interior, and then he's going to play Messi, Suarez, and Griezmann.
Yeah, Messi looks like he's going to be ready for Athletic, but I don't know if he starts because he didn't have a preseason. So I think either way, for both me and Valverde, I think he comes off the bench. But yeah, when it comes to Valverde's lineup, I agree. I think we're going to see Busquets and Rakitic because they didn't start in the last preseason game. They're two of the starters. Artur coming back from Copa America is not the answer. So I guess it's going to be De Jong. It'll be De Jong, Rakitic, Busquets for Valverde. And then Griezmann, Suarez, Dembélé up top. And then Semedo, Piqué. Yep, that's the big one. The left center back spot. I guess it's probably going to go to Lenglet. And then Alba and Ter Stegen. So, to me, actually, it seems pretty simple what he's going to go with. But, again, then he's going to start Arturo Vidal, and then what do we know? And that's just that's the way Valverde works. That's the way it works. And,
yep.
This was a great show, Frances. And I think that even though things might change about Coutinho and Neymar, I think we really answered a lot of questions about the next few weeks. But you have to look forward to us back in your ears next week. So even though we seem to be so forward-thinking about the post-Messi era, we will be back in your ears next week. So thanks so much for tuning in to the show. You can tap in your app and check out the show notes to subscribe. Find us on social media, on Twitter at the Barcelona Pod or at HiltonD13 for me. We have a new Twitter avatar you saw for the season. I did. It might be a little corny, but hashtag new season, hashtag new us. And so we've got a new beautiful yellow backdrop that Francesc made to try to stand out for this new season based on the road jerseys that Barcelona are wearing. We're also on Instagram at the Barcelona Pod. Our closed Facebook group is tbpod.link/group. Deeper dives, discussions, all that. You know what's there. And the Patreon, where I've been doing the quick take match reviews since last December. I had preseason form to work out as well, but now I'm back to doing the quick take match reviews, and so those are always something that our Patreons have to look forward to. You can get in there $2, $3. I'm not telling you to break the bank here. I appreciate whatever you do, and Francesc appreciates whatever you do. But again, you don't have to break the bank. Just $2, $3 gets you all those match reviews that come out a few hours after the matches, or even right after. It depends on schedules. But that's tbpod.link/Patreon. We're also on YouTube now at the Barcelona Podcast. Check out and hit that subscription button. And depending on when you had this in your ears, there is a new episode coming out in the next few days, basically profiling the new additions to the squad. Yes, you know who Antoine Griezmann is, and you remember him at Atletico, but we're going to talk about him at Real Sociedad and where he was even before that. De Jong as well. We're going to learn how to say the Dutch club he played for before he went to Ajax and all those different things. So I would just want to give you a little teaser on that about the new additions to the first team and where they were before they got to Barcelona. So when you go to YouTube, the Barcelona Podcast, check that out. hit the subscription button. That's what you need to do there. And of course, come back and listen to our show on whatever device you're listening to every single week. So thanks so much for listening to the Barcelona Podcast. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Forza Barça.
Forza!